Chainsaw Man has done something very interesting. To address the elephant in the room, we have a brand new horseman. That would be death, at least for now. There is the idea that perhaps this could be the new control devil, but kind of unlikely. While sure, possibilities are endless, I feel like there is more of a leap, more of a hurdle that you have to go through to make that explanation somewhat viable. Introducing death at the time that death is ready to be introduced in a way that seems pretty normal and standard and what was to be expected makes the most sense right now. I know people want answers for the control devil, for Naoyata. Is it legitimate? Is she actually dead? Would she get reincarnated? And the answer is we don't know, but I highly doubt this one is control. In that case, Death is here as a high school girl at the same high school that Denji, Fami, and Asa go to, and she is incredibly anxious. I have seen two responses to this. One hand, people like the design, the pale horseman, harbinger of death, the anxiety-driven nature of it makes sense. The other side is people think it's too basic, too normal, too I can kind of understand both arguments, but at the same time, what were you truly expecting? All the horsemen so far have been identical design-wise with what they represent thematically. Now, even though death is larger in scale conceptually, why would it be that drastically different? I think people wanted death to be this gross abomination of a creature, similar to the other primal fears. But even within the primal fears, they have a motif, a representation that is related to them or what they're doing or how they act, etc. The exact same way as control or Fami or war, death, logically, is no different. However, I may be able to quell your design concerns. If you do want death to be this big, gross abomination, there is a very high chance that you will get a transformation out of her. So far, the one thing that we haven't seen, that we kind of briefly know that the horsemen can actually do, is transform. They should realistically have different bodily devilish forms that they would utilize within hell. We also know that they potentially have a smaller traversal form similar to Yoru, a bird. Personally, I like the design. I think it's simple, I think it's cute, I think it's right up Fujimoto's alley. Funny enough, if you've been around my channel or the Chainsaw Man community for a long time, you've heard about this theory before. The idea that the final horseman, being Death, would be an anxiety-driven, savior-like character. The idea that I had a long time ago was that all of the horsemen represent their opposites. So Control, for example, had the want, need for a pure, genuine connection, relationship, and love. That would be her opposite. That's what she seeked. The most recent one being famine, obviously conceptually is starvation, having no access to food or water, but you could also bridge that to concepts, starved of knowledge or affection, love, etc. So what would a loose opposite to famine be? Cherishing. Fami cherishes relationships, she cherishes moments, she cherishes people. War is a little bit more complicated because there's a third party involved, that is Asa, but the one that I normally gravitate towards is identity. Because war is a combination of a multitude of different things, gun devil, tank, etc. The identity that Yoru has, going by many different names over generations, gets to her, and that she doesn't have an identity of her own but drastically seeks it, wants to be the thing that is on top, that is completely thrived around a egocentrical point of view. And to have an ego, you need to have a personality. Have a personality, you need to have an identity, and that's what war thrives around. So naturally, this is where we come to death. What do you think the opposite with death would be? Life, right? Saving people. But it sounds really weird when it comes to death because this is the scary big thing that Fujimoto and everyone else is scared of, right? But what if that's not the issue? What if death isn't actually the problem? If this character is death, the way that she is introduced, being anxiety driven and wanting to save people, makes so much sense thematically. This is what all the horsemen have represented this entire time. They're opposites, but caged to a nature that they can never be free from. So you might have a very big question. If death is a savior, who is actually the villain? Who is the problem of this story? That potentially would be war. The beginning of this chapter, there is a very crucial bit of information that is given to us that is in relation to Yoru and Asa. While Denji and Asa are having this back and forth conversation and really just going through the motions mentally, Asa is trying to take her own life. And I really want to point out how drastic of a measure that is, because she's not the type of person to do that. Through all the things that they have been through, throughout this entire story, not once has Asa ever acted in that way before. So clearly something has changed, something has happened, and she does mention it, that Yoru is scheming, that she's planning something, that death doesn't change anything, that death isn't technically the issue. Yoru is, and so much so that Asa is willing to try and take her own life or force Denji to kill her to stop Yoru from accomplishing it. What do you think Yoru could do? The very one thing that she is built for, her nature, that is war. And the one way that she accomplishes war is by garnering weapons. If she gets a hold of Denji, the hero of hell, of Pochita, there's a high chance she could also get a hold of death itself. And if war has both of those weapons, the ability to erase things from existence, and death itself, alongside gun, tank, nuclear warheads, whatever else it may be, she could do whatever she wants. She could plunge the world, both human and hell, into this eternal cycle of warfare and mayhem. You would want to wish that you were extinct. You would want to wish that there was a place like Aging's world that you could escape to. Nothing but death, destruction, and annihilation. And who else but to stop all of that than Denji? I really like the conversation that Asa and Denji have. It's simple, it's to the point, but it's very dramatic. It's escalated to such an extent that Asa doesn't know how to handle this newfound information, and it's a burden that is scarily obtuse. We don't know the answers. We don't know what this event looks like or what Yoru is planning, and she can't seem to explain it to Denji either. It just spirals into the first action of trying to take her own life. So when Denji kind of tries to do that, she's so taken back from it. She can't accept her own death. And I mean, who can blame her, right? Denji has a very funny way with words, because while not really supportive or comforting, it opens up Asa's eyes a little bit. Obviously to understanding Denji, but also to understand the situation that she is in. It's a very odd sense of reassurance is what she doesn't have, and she hasn't had in a very long time. Reassurance is a very powerful feeling, knowing that someone is there for you, knowing that someone could commit an action for you, knowing that someone could comfort you or help you or just be able to do something if you were to ask them to. Denji is the type of character to do it with no train of thought or to convince you otherwise, to take a moment to think about it, to actually try and help you. Who better to understand this type of situation that you're in than the person that is not only friends and merged with the devil as well, someone that has died multiple different times. It's a small thing that Denji does, but putting himself down to Asa's level of trying to understand death and the consequences of it is very humbling. It's a cute moment, and I think that's what bridges them closer together in a really weird way. Of course, it doesn't turn into this big, emotionally filled, philosophical understanding of each other. Instead, it goes back to what Denji does best, and that's redirection. To take his mind off all of this intense emotional stuff, and we'll figure it out later, keyword we, but for now, let's do this. As goofy and silly Denji is, he is incredibly smart in his own way. And in a world where humans don't really understand him, this in-between that him and Asa share is the perfect playground for him. There is no one else on this planet that can understand what Denji is going through other than Asa, but also vice versa. The only other person that can understand Asa is currently Denji. Having them somewhat on the same page, somewhat working together, is powerful and will be the critical point of where this story potentially ends. If for whatever reason Yoru does get to where she needs to go, is able to weaponize death or even chainsawman, the problem lies in how to stop it. And I don't want to put the sad idea out there, but perhaps the only way to stop Yoru is to kill Asa. And the one person that would kill Asa would be Denji. I think there is a groundwork here for potential, for excitement, for a whole different avenue for Fujimoto to take. And honestly, I wish him the best. I think he will do a magnificent job either way, all the way to the end.